first and foremost, Ineos Grenadiers, they came out, they won Criterium du Dauphiné with Richie Porte, and then what did they do at the Tour de Suisse? They won that race. At the same time, I don't think that I have ever seen Ineos put together such a pre-Tour de France show as we are seeing this year. They have, on multiple occasions, won either the Criterium du Dauphiné or the Tour de Suisse, but to see them send two completely different rosters, kind of short list names for their Tour de France squad to both of these races and come out with yellow jerseys, that to me is saying people need to be scared of Ineos this year.
It is quite impressive to see the Ecuadorian pull off the Tour de Suisse, just 1 week after Richie Porte pulled off the Criterium du Dauphiné, and it really kind of speaks to how much depth this British team has and how much money they have, because to get to this point, you got to spend the money to have these top riders, and they've done that, and that's where they're able to pull off these big wins like this. And yeah, it says a lot too. And I was looking at the team for the Tour de Suisse. I mean, it's not that Carapaz went in there with a strong team of helpers. He had Luke Rowe to help him out earlier on the stage, and of course the time trial champion, two-time time trial champion Rowan Dennis early on in the climbs, and then Eddie Dunbar. But it wasn't quite the same team we saw line up in the Tour de Suisse, but still Carapaz was able to pull it off and did quite well. I mean, there was some stiff competition there. Of course, we saw Rigoberto Urán come up in the final stages. We saw some great riding by Michael Woods, but Carapaz has really already had his name in the running there for team leadership at Ineos Grenadiers heading into the Tour de France, but this really underlined that the Giro d'Italia champion can have a shot of leading the Ineos team and have a real shot of winning the Tour de France. Of course, the big thing for Richard is going to be those TTs at the Tour de France and how well he's going to manage those time trials. But a mountain stage win in the Tour de Suisse and the overall race win in the Tour de Suisse puts him right up there with Geraint Thomas, Theo Gegenhardt, Richie Porte. It's a strong lineup, Michael.
It's an incredible lineup, and I was kind of crunching the numbers going back through the years at the Criterium du Dauphiné and the Tour de Suisse just to try to figure out what Ineos' success at these two races might mean for the Tour this year. And looking at it, they have transformed yellow jerseys at both of those races into yellow jerseys at the Tour de France in the past. Chris Froome, he won the Criterium du Dauphiné in 2013, 15, and 16. All three of those years, he went on to win the Tour de France. Geraint Thomas did the exact same thing at the Criterium du Dauphiné in 2018, going on to win the Tour de France. And then 2019, Ineos went to the Tour de Suisse with Egan Bernal, and of course Egan Bernal won that in 2019. So, you can, for my money, I think that the Criterium du Dauphiné is going to be a little bit more telling for what the Tour de France leadership is going to look like, because that is where they had the time trial motors, and this is what we've talked about a lot about the Tour route this year, Gregor, is that the guys like Richie Porte and Geraint Thomas, they're my favorites for the Tour de France just because they can put out the time trials, and that's going to be incredibly important on two separate occasions. I think there are over 50 kilometers of individual time trialing in this year's Tour. Is that right?
Yeah, we're right up there about 50, Michael. And I know you're going to go on and on about Richie Porte. We already went into that last week's show. You don't really have to underline it.
Actually, I always joke about it. Richie always breaks my heart in the Tour. I would be incredibly happy to see Richie Porte win the Tour. Like, as far as like a rider who I would like to see, Richie's my guy. I'm going for him. But realistically, if I were a betting man and if I were to put money down, of all the riders going to France this year, I would put my money on Geraint Thomas.
Well, that's the first time we're going to agree in this show. I think, Geraint Thomas has to be the favorite among the Ineos Grenadiers team for the 2021 Tour de France, given, as you say, those large number of time trials and Thomas's, of course, background in team pursuit riding, classics riding. He's a big motor. But I'll give it to you. Richie Porte is a great time trialist and has a real shot of winning the Tour de France if he really wants that. He was saying at the Dauphiné it's not what he wants, and he wants to be the team helper, but whether or not we take him at face value, we'll have to find out when we run through the 21 stages at the Tour de France. That's another area where Egan Bernal also does well in the TTs for such a small climber. And think about it, is that Ineos just won the Giro d'Italia. Afterwards, there were talks of Egan Bernal going on to race the Tour de France and perhaps going for that double, or at least being on the Team Ineos team. But of course, he came down with coronavirus. So they could have had Egan Bernal in the lineup as well, and that would have been quite impressive. But Ineos, they're really going into this Tour de France with a big team, and they're gonna want to pull it back again after Egan Bernal got the victory in 2019, and they didn't have a shot at it in 2020. So they're going to want to stick it back to the Slovenians, and with this lineup, a possible lineup, Michael, we'll get into that. The possible lineup of riders they could have at the 2021 Tour de France, it's impressive, and they have a real shot of doing it.
Yeah, and you did tip Eddie Dunbar a minute ago, Gregor, who did it. He was the MVP at Tour de Suisse for Richard Carapaz. What he was doing in the climbs was absolutely incredible. This is a young Irish rider. He raced in America for a couple years with the Action Higgins-Berman team, with that program that just spits out so many young, talented U23 riders into the World Tour. So it seems like it's a little bit of a coming-of-age year for Eddie Dunbar in the World Tour. I don't think that he's going to get a spot on the Ineos' tour roster, but he definitely put his name in the hat with the work he was doing in the mountains. But I mean, Ineos, it's just the same conversation that we have every year of them. It's a spoil of riches, and they're going, and normally they go in with 3 potential winners. This year, for my money, they're going in with 4 potential winners for the Tour, and we'll see how they all cooperate and how, if they can manage to all work together in the opening stages. I think that probably after those, I think it's like stage 8, stage 9, the first time the Tour hits the mountains. At that point, my guess would be we're probably looking at closer to like 2-3 riders who are asserting themselves as the GC favorites on Ineos. But I mean, you have Theo Gegenhardt, I personally think Theo Gegenhardt and Richard Carapaz are just going to be super domestiques in the mountains. But, who knows? Those guys could end up being the winners. We'll see how they get through the hairy stages in Brittany.
Well, for Eddie Dunbar's part there, his ride in the Tour de Suisse, and we saw him every day being that final lead-out man for Richard Carapaz in the mountains. He came home with the white jersey of Best Young Rider, and we saw Richard right with him there after the stages. After the stage 8 ended on Sunday, super happy with his Irish teammate. And of course, he even had a shot. He was shooting off the front there in that final stage 8 to try to catch Michael Woods and Gino Madar, but didn't have a shot at the stage win. But that roster, with possibly Rowan Dennis, Mikhail Kwiatkowski, Castrovejo, and Luke Rowe joining the top 4 guys that we think should be the leaders, it's going to be a packed roster if that roster gets confirmed, Michael.